Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Awilix. Awilix is a jungler and a jungler only. Awilix solo was tried a few times at the pro and minor league level, but it was only a one-hit wonder at a time when the game was in a much different state. Don't get me wrong, you're free to try it, just keep a lookout for bears, okay? In the jungle though, Awilix is a high skill cap assassin who rewards aggressive and well executed plays. Build-wise, Awilix likes to have maximum damage early on, then is able to flex into some defense once her damage begins falling off, similar to most other ability-based assassins in that regard. This means that high impact items like Transcendence, Erendite, and the Mace Tree are all very solid on her, with something like Mantle of Discord as an all-rounder defense item. Given her aggressiveness, Blink is a frequent choice, naturally partnered with Beads in her second slot. However, in tougher matchups, it's not a bad idea to grab the good old Beads and Aegis combo, but naturally all of this is subject to change depending on the given meta and matchups. One reason Awilix is as aggressive as she is her passive. If Awilix is put in combat, and was the entity to initiate the combat status, she is given a significant 35% power boost for 2.5 seconds. This ability is returned to Awilix after 5 seconds of neither taking nor receiving damage. This passive is very simple but is hugely impactful. The 35% power boost is absolutely mega at all stages in the game, so you really don't want to commit to an engagement if you don't have it active. Naturally, you can still of course fight if you're not able to activate it, but keep in mind that Awilix has been balanced with this passive in mind, so if you don't have it on, you're gonna feel it. This passive is most impactful from the start of the game to about the time you get your second item. Impactful for the entire game, however, is Awilix's first ability. Awilix summons Suku, her giant panther, and mounts him. Rides him. Gets on top. While mounted, Awilix moves faster backwards and forwards. However, it has a very significantly slower strafe speed. While controlling Suku, you almost never want to strafe, other than for making very small adjustments to your positioning, and almost always want to rely going backwards and forwards in conjunction with your camera movement. To dismount, Awilix has two options. Firstly, she can simply dismount Suku by using the cancel ability button. This is often the best option as it gives the ability an extremely short half-second cooldown, and while it does cast mana to mount Suku again, it's always best to keep this ability in the back pocket, rather than fully committing with the alternative way of dismounting. In this method, Suku and Awilix leap forward slowly, creating a small damaging AoE, which will naturally proc your passive. This method of dismounting Suku is a bit of a beginner's trap. It's a leap, meaning you can go over walls with it, however it is also one of the slowest in the game, i.e. one of the easier ones to react to. If the opponent is able to get too far away from you while you are jumping, you may not be able to get an auto attack and begin comboing them. Oftentimes, it is best to close the gap using Suku's speed, then dismount by cancelling the ability and start comboing from there. Then, if they get low, you can chase them again with Suku and use the leap if need be. Or, if you get low, you can mount Suku and begin retreating. Again, use the leap if need be. If you're new to SMITE, just so you know, at this time at least, this is something completely unique to Awilix, so give it some time to get used to. And don't be discouraged if you sometimes use the leap at the wrong time, or dismount at the wrong time, it's all part of the learning of the character. A bit like Awilix's 3. Awilix fires a projectile form of Suku across the ground, passing through and damaging all enemies as well as being able to travel through walls. If this ability hits an enemy who is standing to the side or behind the projectile, they are knocked up. This is a relatively simple ability. What it really comes down to is learning the projectile speed and size to hit it consistently, as well as understanding the angles you must hit in order to successfully hit a knockup. Significantly more complex is Awilix's 2. You may have noticed this little mark on targets while we went over Awilix's passive, 1 and 3. This mark is a part of Awilix's second ability. Enemies damaged by Awilix are marked with Moonlight. When you activate your 2, Awilix will leap over, root, and damage the closest marked target. Awilix is target immune while casting her 2, since she is technically in the air. So, you can use this ability in certain situations to avoid certain abilities, most infamous of which is Poseidon's Kraken. However, that's not all there is to this ability. Before we begin this portion of the ability, just don't pay any attention to the way this is explained in the ability text. It just doesn't make sense. Essentially, this ability is modified based on what part of her attack chain Awilix is currently on. If you've basic attacked once, you get the second weakest version of this ability and it only hits a single target. If you've hit your second basic attack, the ability is at its strongest and will now hit in an AoE. If you hit with your third and final basic attack, your 2 will only hit a single target and will be at its weakest. And naturally, if you mark them with your first or third ability, you'll only be getting the weakest version of your 2 on it. This may seem confusing at first, but honestly it's quite simple. You go for the most powerful AoE version 100% of the time unless you really need to avoid an ability or simply finish them off. Also, as I'm sure you've guessed already, you use the AoE version of the 2 to clear camps as well. I'd like to say that this ability gets some getting used to, but honestly this one shouldn't take so long. In most circumstances, just press the appropriate button when the big circle comes on the screen and you're golden. A bit like Awilix's ultimate. Upon activation, Awilix becomes immune to roots, slows, and knockbacks, and gains a massive 70 physical power and 70% attack speed buff. Now I know what you might be thinking. Did she just go Super Saiyan? That's not all there is to this ability. If there is an opponent in the air within 75 units of her line of sight, she is able to pull them out of the air and land them directly in front of her, dealing massive damage in the process and activating her quote-unquote Super Saiyan mode. You can knock enemies up yourself with your 3, or the more common method is to team Awilix up with someone with a potent knock-up ability, or to pick her against gods who rely largely on leaps to get away. Keeping in mind that leaps that go underground, such as Scylla 3 or Hades 1, will also count. You can, however, still simply activate this effect for its massive buff. Just keep in mind that it has a massive wind-up time, so you do not want to use this mid-combo. And yes, that does mean that if you miss your window of opportunity to pull someone out of mid-air, the ultimate will still go off, and yes, you will look quite silly. As for leveling these abilities, you're going to want to start with your 2 at level 1. Then, you'll want to level your 3 for some extra poke and damage at level 2. Then finally, at level 3, you can level your 1 and start utilizing Suku. Just use him sparingly at the start though, since its mana costs are really going to add up quick, and you're going to need a lot of mana if you want to use your ultimate during a combo for an early kill. So now that we know a little bit about Awilix, let's tie all of these abilities together for some combos. Awilix is not only mechanically execution heavy, but also requires you to know a great deal about situational awareness and the knowledge of power spikes for specific characters, given her need for an aggressive playstyle and keeping yourself in the lead. While she's clearly not a god you want as your first jungler, she is an absolutely excellent one, once you are ready to more closely analyze and execute what it takes to get and maintain a lead in certain situations, as well as when you're able to maximize aggression, as she's one of the few characters who truly punishes you for not utilizing her to her maximum potential. That's all I have for Awilix for now though. Thank you for watching.